what if the exact things you are chasing right now, um, wealth, utter independence, a constant state of happiness, what if those are scientifically proven to make your life feel entirely meaningless?
I mean, it's a pretty terrifying thought.
It really is. You know, the writer Kurt Vonnegut actually had this brilliant thought in one of his stories. He basically said that God left it entirely up to humans to figure out a purpose for everything, including, just all this.
Right, just the sheer overwhelming reality of life.
Exactly. So I want you to think about that for a second as you're going about your day. When the alarm goes off,
Mm.
what actually gets you out of bed? Like, what
Yeah.
makes the daily grind feel like it's actually building towards something?
It's the ultimate question, really.
Yeah. And today's deep dive is for anyone who loves peeling back the layers of human psychology, but, absolutely hates feeling bogged down by existential dread. We are going on a mission today.
A very specific mission.
Right. We want to uncover the actual scientifically backed blueprint for a fulfilling existence. We're pulling from this really fascinating 2026 piece in Psychology Today by Dr. Mariana Pagosian.
Yes, and she breaks down a massive cross-cultural study that was published by researchers Mask and colleagues in 2025.
Yeah, it is a literal deep dive into the science of purpose. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Well, it's a remarkable piece of research because it takes this incredibly lofty philosophical concept that poets have argued about for centuries, right? Purpose. And it actually pins it down into measurable empirical data.
Which is so hard to do.
It is, because in psychology, purpose has a very specific working definition. It's not just like a fleeting emotion or a vague feeling of goodwill. It is a central self-organizing life aim.
A self-organizing life aim.
Exactly. It organizes your short-term goals. It dictates your long-term ambitions. It manages your everyday behaviors. And ultimately, it provides a sense of overarching meaning.
Okay, but what are the actual stakes here?
The stakes are distinctly biological. Having a purpose isn't just, something nice to print on a greeting card. The clinical literature is incredibly clear that it actually slows cognitive decline as we age and significantly boosts our physical health.
Wait, let's actually unpack that biological claim for a second.
Right.
You're saying that figuring out our, philosophical why directly impacts our cellular health.
Literally, yes.
How does an abstract concept actually protect the physical structure of the brain?
Well, it fundamentally comes down to how the human body processes chronic stress, right, and allostatic load. So when you lack a central organizing aim, everyday setbacks like a flat tire, a rude email, or a financial hit, they register as major threats.
Because you don't have a bigger picture to put them in.
Exactly. So your amygdala overreacts, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline, and over time, that chronic inflammation physically damages brain tissue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, particularly the hippocampus, which handles memory. But when you have a strong sense of purpose, your brain creates a buffer. A setback is no longer an existential threat. It's just a minor hurdle on the way to a much larger goal.
So you don't freak out as much.
Right. Your stress response is blunted. You literally preserve your telomeres. Those are the protective caps on your DNA because your body isn't in this constant low-grade state of panic.
It's deeply ironic, isn't it? Like, the more we try to individually engineer our own joy by just avoiding stress at all costs, the further we push it away.
Yeah, it's a paradox.
But if we anchor ourselves to a bigger goal, our cells literally relax. But I'm curious, how do you even begin to measure something as subjective as the meaning of life? I mean, I imagine the researchers didn't just sit in a room and guess.
No, far from it. To understand how to achieve a good life, you first need to look at the raw materials people are using. So the researchers started with a massive data set. We're talking over 2,000 open-ended responses from people across the United States.
Just asking them directly.
Yeah, they simply asked them where they derive their sense of purpose. And from those thousands of highly personal, unique answers, they distilled the responses down to 16 common sources.
Okay, so I look at these 16 sources sort of like a massive existential buffet.
A buffet.
Yeah, like you're walking down the line with your tray, and there are just so many contrasting options to load up on. You've got material wealth on one side, which the respondents literally defined as accumulating possessions and having the freedom to buy whatever you want.
Right.
But right next to it, you've got inner peace, which is all about gratitude and acceptance and mindfulness. Or, you could scoop up some self-improvement, which is focusing entirely inward on acquiring knowledge.
Versus choosing something like service.
Exactly. Service, which is entirely outward-looking, contributing to the well-being of your community.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have occupational fulfillment,
Hmm.
like finding your calling through your career pitted against family, which is providing for your loved ones.
Well, the buffet metaphor works to a point, but we should probably think of these 16 sources more like architectural materials.
Okay, materials.
Yeah, the researchers wanted to see what kind of house people were actually trying to build. Because in psychology, there isn't just one single type of good life. There are three distinct structures. They're known as the three pillars of a good life.
The three pillars. Okay, what are they?
Those pillars are happiness, meaning, and psychological richness.
See, I think most people use those terms totally interchangeably. Happiness and meaning, I kind of get, but psychological richness, I need you to explain that one. Because honestly, on the surface, psychological richness sounds like an upcharge at a luxury wellness retreat.
That's a funny way to put it, but it's actually a vital distinction that psychology has really only clearly defined in recent years.
Really? So what's the difference?
Think of happiness as the hedonic pillar, experiencing pleasure, feeling comfortable, having high life satisfaction, and lacking pain.
Okay, the feel-good stuff.
Right. Meaning is the eudaimonic pillar. So that's feeling that your life has significance, purpose, and coherence, even if you are currently uncomfortable.
So you can have meaning without being happy in the moment?
Exactly. Now, psychological richness, however, is a life characterized by a variety of interesting, novel, and perspective-changing experiences.
Like traveling or something.
Or just living a complex life. Think of someone who decides to spend a year volunteering in a harsh, frozen climate to study wildlife. They might not be happy. I mean, it's freezing, it's stressful, it's physically demanding.
Right.
And their daily life might feel chaotic rather than perfectly coherent. But it is deeply rich, complex, and memorable. So the researchers wanted to know which of the 16 items on your buffet actually build those three completely distinct pillars.
Okay, this is where I want to introduce a slightly different analogy. Because I agree, the buffet doesn't quite capture the stakes here. It feels more like you said, building a house.
Let's hear it.
Happiness is like the fresh coat of paint and nice furniture, right? It makes the day-to-day experience pleasant. But meaning and psychological richness, those are the load-bearing walls.
Oh, I like that.
You might not stare at them every day, but when a massive storm hits, they are the literal only things keeping the roof from collapsing on your head.
That is a much more accurate framework. And the natural next question for the researchers was, do people in different parts of the world rely on different load-bearing walls?
Makes sense.
To test that, they expanded their scope globally. They enlisted participants from 4 highly distinct cultures: the United States, Poland, Japan, and India.
Why those four specifically?
This selection was highly intentional. These countries represent significant variance on key cultural dimensions. For instance, you have high individualism in the U.S., where the self is the primary unit of society.
Right, very pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Exactly. Versus strong collectivism in India and Japan, where the group or the family unit takes precedence. You also have differences in what sociologists call cultural tightness versus looseness.
Okay, break down tightness and looseness for us in the real world. What does that actually look like?
Well, a tight culture, like Japan, has very strict social norms and a low tolerance for deviant behavior. So if you jaywalk in a tight culture or you speak loudly on a train, the social reprimand is immediate and severe.
People will definitely let you know.
Yes. A loose culture, like the United States, has weaker social norms and a very high tolerance for deviance. You can walk down the street in New York City wearing a giant chicken suit, and most people won't even break their stride.
That is incredibly accurate.
So the researchers are looking at these radically different societal structures to see if the blueprint for a good life actually changes based on where you live.
And this right here is the massive aha moment of the study. Because with all those monumental cultural differences, like radically different religions, different economies, different historical traumas, different tolerances for walking around in a chicken suit, you would completely expect the results to be all over the map.
You'd assume they'd be entirely different.
Right. You would expect the existential blueprints to look alien to one another. But they weren't. When asked what gives them purpose, people's top choices were almost shockingly identical across all 4 countries.
The universality is striking. Across the U.S., Poland, Japan, and India, the sources that people universally endorsed the most, meaning the items they consciously selected as their primary goals, were happiness, self-sufficiency, and family.
The big 3.
Those are the undisputed global champions. On the flip side, the sources that were universally in the bottom 5, The ones people rarely claimed as their primary purpose were religion or spirituality and recognition.
Okay, but wait. If we zoom out and look at humanity as a whole, and we all basically agree that we just want to be happy, we want to be completely self-sufficient, we want to take care of our families, why is the modern world experiencing an epidemic of loneliness?
That is the million-dollar question.
Right. Why is there a multi-billion-dollar self-help industry? If we all supposedly know exactly what we want and millions of people have achieved self-sufficiency, why are so many people completely miserable? Is our intuition just fundamentally flawed?
Well, there is a massive gaping chasm between what we say our purpose is and what actually results in a good life. In research terms, it's the difference between endorsing a source of purpose and that source actually predicting a positive psychological outcome.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because our brains are actively lying to us about what we need to survive.
In many ways, yes. Let's look at the hard data for building the meaningful life pillar.
The load-bearing walls.
Exactly. When researchers looked at what actually predicted a high sense of meaning across all these different cultures, the universal top predictors were mattering, perseverance, and service.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here on mattering. Because if mattering to other people is the ultimate key to a meaningful life, aren't we just talking about peer pressure?
How do you mean?
Well, isn't measuring mattering just measuring how desperate we are for social approval and validation, like just wanting people to like us?
No, and that is a vital distinction to make. Peer pressure and the desire for social approval are about conformity. You change your behavior to avoid rejection or to gain status. That is an extrinsic motivation.
Okay.
Mattering is the perception that you add tangible, intrinsic value to someone else's existence. It is the deep-seated knowledge that if you disappeared tomorrow, you would be genuinely missed because your presence eases the burden of others. It is about contribution, not conformity.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's actually really profound. But wait, look at the sheer irony of the data here.
Huh?
Think about religion and spirituality.
Right.
It was universally one of the least endorsed sources.
Yeah.
Almost nobody consciously selected it for their buffet plate. Yet the data shows it emerged as one of the absolute strongest predictors of actual meaning. And it gets worse. Happiness, self-sufficiency, and material wealth, the exact things people universally claimed they wanted their life's purpose to be, were in the bottom 5 predictors of actual meaning. We are literally sprinting in the wrong direction.
It is known as the predictor paradox. We say we want material wealth and utter self-reliance, assuming they are the foundational prerequisites for meaning.
We think, once I am rich and don't need anyone's help, then my life will mean something.
Exactly. But the data shows meaning is forged in completely different fires. Take perseverance, for example, which was a top predictor. Why does pushing through hardship create meaning?
I mean, no one likes suffering.
Right. The human brain hates cognitive dissonance. If you suffer through years of difficult medical training, or you endure the immense struggle of caring for a sick relative, your brain has to justify that suffering. To reconcile the pain, your mind constructs a powerful narrative of resilience.
It assigns profound meaning to the struggle just to make the psychological math work out.
Exactly. You cannot buy that mechanism with material wealth.
Okay, so that's the load-bearing wall of meaning. But let's look at the fresh coat of paint. Let's shift to the happiness pillar. If your goal isn't just profound, heavy meaning, but actual day-to-day joy, what works?
If you just want to achieve a happy life, the top predictors universally were inner peace, positive impact, and physical health. Notice what is missing from that list.
Family. Which is crazy, because earlier you said family was in everybody's top 5 desired sources of purpose. Surely having a family makes you happy. I can literally hear parents yelling at their devices right now. How is my family not predicting my happiness?
I know, the data is deeply counterintuitive here. Family, despite being universally highly desired, was among the least predictive sources for a happy life. Similarly, material wealth was a terrible predictor of day-to-day happiness.
I mean, if you think about it realistically, it actually makes perfect sense. Think about the sleepless nights of raising an infant, the constant low-level worry about your teenager driving, the sheer financial stress of keeping a household running, the chaotic mess of navigating in-laws.
It's a lot of stress.
Family provides a monumental sense of overarching duty. It gives you a reason to keep going. But day-to-day, feeling good, happiness, experiencing pure pleasure and lack of pain, no, family is often the exact opposite of that.
Right. Family might give you a profound sense of responsibility, but it doesn't automatically grant you the pillar of happiness as psychologists define it.
Right.
And if we look at the third pillar, the psychologically rich life, the pattern continues. To achieve a life of complex, varied, and perspective-shifting experiences, the top predictors were service, mattering, and self-improvement.
And let me guess, wealth didn't help there either.
Nope. Material wealth and self-sufficiency contributed the least to a psychologically rich life globally.
So what does this all mean for us? We've got these three architectural pillars, and our modern cultural instincts are essentially batting zero across the board.
What's fascinating here is how notoriously bad humans are at predicting what will actually fulfill them. We construct our entire modern lives around chasing wealth, chasing the fleeting feeling of happiness itself, and desperately trying to build these fortresses of independence.
Because we genuinely believe if I just have enough money in the bank and I don't have to rely on anyone else, I will finally feel fulfilled.
Yes, but the empirical data proves the exact opposite is true. Across the globe, regardless of your cultural background or your economic system, meaning and richness come from service, from perseverance through difficult times, and from mattering to other people.
We constantly treat life as an individual sport, but the data is screaming at us that fulfillment is actually a team sport. It requires a roster.
Absolutely.
But surely there have to be some variations in the data, right? Like the specific flavor of a meaningful life still has to depend somewhat on the local environment.
Oh, definitely. The broad strokes of human psychology are universal, but the cultural quirks the researchers found are highly revealing. Take Japan, for example.
What happened there?
It was highly unique in the dataset. Occupational fulfillment, so excelling at your work and finding your calling there was a top predictor for both meaning and happiness in Japan. That wasn't true anywhere else.
Oh, wow.
Furthermore, religion and spirituality ranks lowest for meaning in Japan, contrasting sharply with the global average. And mattering, which was a top 5 happiness predictor globally, ranked near the bottom in Japan.
That is so interesting. I want you, the listener, to consider these quirks in the context of your own life for a second.
Okay.
Think about how we view work in the West right now. We have these massive trends like quiet quitting, where the goal is to do the bare minimum required not to get fired.
Right. Work is basically viewed as a hostile transaction.
Exactly. I give you 40 hours of my time, you give me money, and I use that money to go buy my real purpose on the weekend. Does this data mean Japanese people are just genetically wired to love corporate labor?
Not at all.
Or is it more likely that their culture seamlessly blends occupation with service and positive impact? Maybe in a highly collectivist culture like Japan, your daily job is deeply woven into your communal duty. You aren't just filing papers, you are holding up your end of the societal contract.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, your insight is spot on. Culture dictates the vehicle through which we achieve universal human goals. The underlying psychological need to contribute is universally human, but how you are allowed to contribute is entirely cultural.
That makes a lot of sense.
Let's look at India and Poland for other distinct vehicles. In India, internal standards, which basically means living authentically by your own principles, knowing exactly who you are and sticking to it, was the ultimate top predictor for both a meaningful and a happy life.
Oh, interesting.
And uniquely, material wealth actually strongly predicted psychological richness in India.
See, that actually makes perfect sense if you view it through something like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. In a rapidly developing economy, material wealth isn't just about buying a flashy sports car to show off.
Right, it's functional.
Wealth buys you baseline security, which then buys you access to higher education, travel, and varied cultural experiences. It literally buys the infrastructure required for a psychologically rich life. And what about Poland?
Poland stood out by uniquely ranking family as its second strongest predictor of a meaningful life.
Really? Even though it didn't predict happiness.
Exactly. While globally, family didn't predict day-to-day happiness, in Poland, the cultural structures, the religious history, and societal values elevate the family unit into a profound source of deep, abiding meaning. It is the primary vehicle for mattering in that specific culture.
It's just so fascinating how the environment dictates the application. But underneath all of that cultural noise, whether you are working in an office in Tokyo, raising a family in Warsaw, or building a business in Chicago, there was a baseline operating system for human fulfillment.
Yes. And when the researchers synthesized this massive undertaking, looking across all 2,000 participants, mapping the 16 sources, defining the 3 pillars, and analyzing the 4 vastly different cultures, they concluded that an invisible thread runs through our pursuit of purpose.
The article actually quotes the philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson to describe this invisible thread, and I feel like it perfectly encapsulates the data.
It's a great quote.
He wrote that ultimately purpose is about having positively touched other lives, to have it make some difference, that you have lived and lived well.
The hard data finally confirms the philosophy. The mechanisms that reliably predict a good, resilient life service, mattering, positive impact, they all require an external focus. They require the existence of another person. You cannot matter in a vacuum.
I really want to bring this right back to you listening right now. Think about the messaging we are bombarded with every single time we open a social media app.
It's relentless.
We are told relentlessly that self-care, self-sufficiency, and optimizing our personal individual happiness are the ultimate goals of a successful adult. We're told to build our own isolated empires, guard our boundaries with high walls, and basically always put ourselves first.
But the data just doesn't support that.
No. All of this rigorous, cross-cultural data from thousands of people points to one undeniable truth. Trying to hack your way to happiness as a solo player is a losing game. True meaning and true psychological richness require you to look outward and carry some weight for the group.
It is the ultimate paradox of the human condition. To fulfill yourself, you actually must concern yourself with the needs of others. The moment you prioritize service and genuinely mattering to your community, the happiness and the profound meaning you were so desperately chasing on your own, they tend to arrive naturally as byproducts.
They are byproducts of action, not targets you can just aim at directly. Which leaves us with a pretty heavy, but I think incredibly inspiring final thought. We started with Kurt Vonnegut saying God left it up to us to figure out the purpose of all this.
Right.
And we looked at the buffet of 16 different options we try to use to build our lives. But if the data proves that perseverance and service reliably predict a meaningful life, while simply chasing happiness fails completely, well, then perhaps purpose isn't something we are supposed to just find fully formed under a rock.
Or waiting in a new job title.
Exactly. Perhaps purpose is something we actually construct in the exact moments we are struggling, persevering to help someone else. So tomorrow morning when the alarm goes off and you're trying to figure out what gets you out of bed, I want to challenge you to ask yourself, am I trying to magically find my purpose today, or am I willing to build it through a little bit of perseverance and service to someone else?